Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and we welcome you to the 2019 Oswego High School Hall of Fame induction ceremony. I'm Mark Maravito. I'll be your MC for tonight. I'd just like to tell you a little bit about the history. The OHS Hall of Fame was founded in 2008 by Athletic Director Scott Sugar, and Scott's with us tonight. Where are you, Scott? So we thank Scott for getting the ball rolling on that. Okay? And the Hall of Fame is modeled after the New York State Public High School Athletic Association Hall of Fame, which includes 4 categories for potential inductees: athletes, coaches, contributors, and teams. And tonight we will enshrine our 8th class of inductees into the Hall of Fame. And during tonight's ceremony, the Hall of Fame display at the Oswego High School we'll add those plaques there, and that is sponsored by the Buck Boosters and the Oswego City School District, and we thank them for that. And also, each inductee will receive a lapel pin tonight to recognize them as new members of the Hall of Fame. And I would first like to introduce the president of the Buck Boosters, Mr. Sean Callan.
Thank you. I just want to welcome everybody to the 11th Annual Hall of Fame induction ceremony, and congratulations to all the inductees. On behalf of the Buck Boosters Board, and you'll see the names of the board members within the program, work with a great group of people that are working together on this board. We truly hope everyone has a great night this evening. It's a special night for sure, and we're proud that we could bring it to you, so thank you for being part of it. Mark, thank you for being the next man up to MC the ceremony. It's great to have you part of tonight and everything that you do for the school district. We appreciate it. The venue, hopefully everybody recognizes the venue here is amazing. Thank you to the Broadwell Hospitality Group and Georgie Broadwell. So appreciate everything that the Broadwell family does in our community, including the support of the Buck Boosters as a corporate sponsor. We very much appreciate everything that they do. The Boosters continue to work very hard to support the student athletes in our district, our great coaches that we have, and the vision that Rhonda holds for our athletic programs. School spirit is something that we continue to work on as well. The experience, the memories, they last, they last a long time, and the entire student body should hold great memories for these years in middle school and high school. So just want to thank you, the inductees. While I wasn't in school during the times that any of you were in the Oswego High School, I am a graduate of the Oswego High School, your times, and I trust that your accomplishments created memories not only for you, your parents, your siblings, but the entire school body, which is pretty awesome, and you should be proud of that. Coaches, players, teachers, trainers, they come into our lives and they make an impact on us. And what they meant to us never leaves us, even when they're gone. And we're all so lucky for one another in this room and everybody that's come through the Oswego High School, and we should cherish that forever. So just hold that. I want to thank you for being here tonight, and thank you for supporting the Buck Boosters. Rhonda, a Buck herself, who dominated on the fields when she was in high school, and now she's doing a great job as our athletic director. She's up next. We're very fortunate to have her back in Oswego as our athletic director. Please welcome Rhonda Bullard.
Thank you, Sean. Welcome to our 11th Annual Athletic Hall of Fame induction ceremony. It was back in 2007 that this special event was created by Scott Sugar, who is in attendance tonight. Thank you, Scott. Scott, thank you for your hard work and dedication to the Oswego Athletics program. As I look around the room tonight, I am honored to be speaking to such a diverse group of people that have made such an impact in the Oswego Athletics program, either as an athlete, an administrator, a coach, a trainer, or supporter. Being a former Buccaneer athlete, I can speak firsthand on how your leadership and encouragement have provided Oswego student athletes great role models to emulate. Quoting John Quincy Adams, "If your actions inspire others to dream more, learn more, do more, and become more, you are a leader. Your accomplishments and contributions will never be taken lightly or forgotten." At this time, would all the Hall of Fame inductees from previous classes please stand up? Thank you for being here to honor this year's inductees and for continuing our Buccaneer athletic traditions. I would also like to have a moment of silence to acknowledge those inductees that have passed on. Thank you. I would be remiss if I did not recognize the behind-the-scenes yet instrumental members of the school district and Board of Education that are in attendance tonight. Superintendent Dr. Dean Guai, please stand. Board President Amy Callan. And Athletics Assistant Kimberly Patrick. We thank you for your insight and support. Lastly, thank you to George Broadwell and the staff of the Lake Ontario Event and Convention Center, because this is an absolutely beautiful venue, the Buccaneer Sports Boosters Organization, Step One Creative, and the Hall of Fame Committee for hosting and sponsoring this prestigious event. I will now turn the microphone over to our Masters of Ceremonies, Mark Morbido.
Folks, tonight each inductee will have a friend, relative, or an acquaintance present them. That means they'll introduce them and tell you a little bit about the inductee before they come up to receive their plaque. And the first presenter actually is me, because Mike McCroby asked me if I would present him tonight. Mike was the varsity softball coach at Oswego High School from 1989 to 2007, and Mike and I have been friends for about 35 years, I think, right? Is that right, Mike? 35? Something like that. Okay, we started working at Oswego High School at the same time in 1982. We knew each other a year or so before that because we played on a softball team together, the Ferlito Farms team, and there's some alumni of that team here. I was going to tell a couple of Ferlito stories, but not in polite company. I'm not sure if the statute of limitations has run out on some of those things. So I'll skip that part. And if you read the program, you know about the many honors that Mike has brought to our school over the years. 6 league titles, 3 sectional titles, which is a lot, but slightly fewer than your son Eric, right? How many do you have here? 5, all right. Too bad, Mike. Mike was 7 times he was the league coach of the year, and 1 time in 1993 he was named New York State softball coach of the year. So we know about those things and we've read about them in the program, but there's a couple other things that I want to bring up that some of you might be aware of, but those of us who have coached might know a little bit better than you, and I'd just like to describe it. The first thing that I thought of is to recognize Mike for the thousands, and I mean thousands of hours outside of practice and games that he spent over the years. This would include stuff like organizing and working at pitching clinics and batting clinics, even in the dead of winter. All those things are necessary to have a good program. Organizing and sometimes coaching the summer travel teams. I don't know how many hours that is. It's probably tens of thousands. And another thing that you really need to have a good program. Fundraisers, right? Lots of chicken barbecues and clothing sales. And the clothing sales were great for the bank account of the softball team, but were also great for school spirit, because when Mike had those, then the school hallways were filled with kids that had Buccaneer apparel on, including the tie that I'm wearing. So really, it is. That's where I got it, from one of your clothing sales. So those things, we don't think about those, and those of us who've been involved in this coaching or being, like I was a class advisor for a lot of years, it's a lot of hours, and I just wanted to mention that because it's a lot of work. And the one thing that I haven't mentioned yet, but I want to mention, which might be the most important one, was, I would say, probably the last 10 or 15 years, Mike, that you coached, you organized those summer trips, or excuse me, spring trips to Florida, South Carolina, Florida, stuff like that, which was kind of a new thing at the time, and lots of fundraising required, lots of stress, worrying about the safety of the kids, but it was a huge thing for them. I had a lot of those kids in class, and they were always excited about it. And for some of them, I remember chaperoning one trip for you, and there were a couple of kids on the bus that had never been out of New York State. And so it was an exciting thing. They'd never been in the warm weather in March or April or whatever it was. And for most of us, I think including me, there's one or two things you did in high school that were just so much fun or so enriching that you always have good memories of high school. And I know for a lot of the kids on the softball team, that was the spring trip to Florida or South Carolina or wherever you went. And always there were some side trips too, right? Besides softball, you'd take them to the Disney parks or went to a couple of major league games, right? Didn't you? Camden Yards maybe or something, okay. So those are great things, and they take a lot of time, and it's time that most of us don't see. We might see Mike at the games or know about the hours of practice, but these things cumulatively are probably more hours than that, but were things that made Mike the person that he was. In addition, I don't know how he did this, but he managed to teach 5 English classes every day, did a great job at that. He was the advisor to the school newspaper, the Buck Bulletin, and while Mike was the advisor, he won more awards than we can count, right? I hate to embarrass you, but how many times did you win Central New York School Newspaper of the Year? A lot. It was every year. We came to expect it. One year he came in second. We're like, what's going on? What's going on? And besides the school newspaper, some years Mike was also the National Honor Society advisor, which is also a lot of work. And probably most importantly, Mike McCroby was Oswego High School's official director of pranks and practical jokes, which most of the time went over well, sometimes not, but that improved, I would say, faculty morale, except when I was the butt of the joke, and it was other. And for probably the first 20 years that Mike was coaching, he and Sally were raising 4 small children. So I could never really figure out how he could get all of this done, but he did it. And he did it well. And I was trying to think about why, how could you get all this done? And I think it boils down to Mike was one of those guys that this was not just something he did, this was who he was. This was a big part of his identity, to be the softball coach for so many years, and we in the Oswego School District were the beneficiaries of it. I emailed Ted Curley a couple of weeks ago when I knew about the ceremony and that I was going to present for Mike, and I asked Ted, who was the AD in the 90s and was like a mentor to a lot of us, will you be here? And he said, no, I'll still be in Florida. So I asked him if he would just send up a couple of words, because I don't think our honoring Mike would be complete without some words from Ted. So he did send this to me, and I'll read it. It says, Dear Mike, I'm sorry I couldn't be there tonight to congratulate you in person. Mark asked that I send along a few words to describe my memories of the years we worked together. And he goes on to say, Mike's love of softball and his dedication to his players come to mind first when I think of the years I served as athletic director. Mike was above all a teacher, a great teacher, who had the ability to make complex concepts understandable to his students, including his softball students. He had an idea and a plan for each and every practice and each and every game. Never was a detail missed. His teams were as well prepared as any I have ever seen. He had high expectations for his players, but also for himself, which made him a great role model. With Mike in charge, I always knew the program was in good hands. And despite the many victories, championships, and coaching honors, Mike has always remained humble. He was always immensely proud of his team's accomplishments, but never acted as though he was the reason for their success. As a lifetime Buccaneer, Mike was not only proud of the softball program, but also of his school and his community. So congratulations, Mike, and congratulations to all of tonight's inductees on your well-deserved honor. Sincerely, Ted Curley. So without further ado, Coach Mike McRobey.
I can't tell you how humbled and honored I am to be here tonight. I'd like to thank the Hall of Fame Selection Committee, Sean Callan and the Buccaneer Boosters, Athletic Director Rhonda Bullard, and the entire athletic department and this venue for tonight's event. I can't guarantee I'm going to be able to hold things together tonight. A few years ago, the pitcher on my first varsity team back in 1989, Barb Verdoliva, who's here somewhere, probably hiding now, she was inducted into this Hall of Fame, and she was moved to tears when she spoke about her induction. And Barbie's a heck of a lot tougher than I am, so I'll do my best to keep my emotions in check, but there's no guarantees. When Rhonda had first told me I was selected, I thought she might be mistaken, because I wasn't quite sure how the guy who got cut from the JV baseball team in 1973, or the JV girls tennis coach who won 9 matches in 5 years, could be considered a Hall of Famer. But obviously I'm here because I was blessed with tremendous softball players. And I'll talk about them in a few minutes. First, I'd like to congratulate the other inductees. I've known most of them or their families for years. So it's truly a privilege to share this podium with them tonight. I have to say a few words first about my friend Michelle Wink. You know, you can work with somebody for 20 or 30 years and just be a coworker. But Michelle was my dear friend. She was with us through thick and thin, you know, through wins and losses. And Michelle and I, she was kind of like the little sister that I never had. She had nicknames for everybody, and the players here can tell you that. She called me George, and she said I was the George Washington of her Mount Rushmore of coaches. And no higher praise has ever been given to me than that. I shared that Mount Rushmore of coaches with Ted Curley, Pete Sears, and Tom Frawley. So, you know, she would just always be there for us. After a win, she'd always seek me out after a game, whether it was in the coach's office or on my way to the car. You know, she'd stick out her hand. Michelle was a hugger, right, Tim? Michelle was a hugger, but she knows that I'm not. So she'd always stick out her hand and say, "Great win, George." And then she'd say, again, another high compliment that I'll remember the rest of my life. She'd always say, "I wish I just had one more year of eligibility left so I could play and suit up for you." And those words tonight mean even more to me. And even when we lost, she'd be there, whether it was a losing streak or when parent drama reared its ugly head occasionally. Michelle would be there, and she'd say, "Coach," or George, "just give me the word, and I'll fix you that special water bottle." And it was this water bottle. This was my game day water bottle. Coaches are superstitious. This was my game day water bottle for over 20 years. And I knew that the special water bottle wasn't going to have water in it. The special water bottle that Michelle and I talked about for years was going to be Captain Morgan and Coke. And I'd say to Michelle, I said, "Michelle, that's pretty tempting, but we'd probably both lose our jobs over that one." And she'd smile, and she'd say, "Yeah, you're right, but let's get together this summer and have a drink." And I said, "That'd be great." And one summer led to the next, and we never had that drink. So Michelle, I'm sure you're looking down upon us tonight, and I can promise you that the minute I sit down, that I'm going to have that drink. out of our special water bottle. And like you always told us, like you always told me, it's not going to be the cheap stuff. It's going to be Captain Morgan's private stock. Obviously, coaching and teaching are all about the relationships, and nobody goes in the Hall of Fame alone. And so there's a lot of people from my past who made a difference. The list is endless, but I have to mention just a few and single them out tonight. First of all, my parents. They rarely, if ever, saw me coach. They always thought it would be superstitious or a jinx if we were on a winning streak and they came to watch one of the games. But my mom would always call after the game. Even when I was in my early 30s, I was a grown man for crying out loud. And my mom would call and say, "How'd the girls do tonight?" And I'd say, "We won." And she'd say, "That's nice." And when we lost, she'd say, "Well, you know, Mike, you can't win them all." To which I would always respond, "But Mom, I want to win them all." And my father was the kind of dad of the 60s and 70s who would always give advice. And he gave my brother and I the same advice year after year, all the time. And it was always, you get out of life what you put into it. Or you get out of an activity what you put into it. And my dad and I disagreed a lot. And I'm going to have to disagree with his philosophy tonight because I really think that I got a heck of a lot more out of teaching and coaching at Oswego High School than I put into it. Anyone close to my age will tell you that we grew up in a time period like the movie The Sandlot. Every single morning in the summer, we'd show up at the ballpark. And there wouldn't be 18 guys there to play 9-on-9 baseball. If 8 guys showed up, no worries. We'd play 4 versus 4 and make up our own rules. Things like right field is foul, invisible base runners. And that's how we rolled. And if there wasn't enough for 4-on-4, if there were only 3 or 4 of us there, again, no worries. One of us would stand at home plate and be the coach. And we'd hit flies and grounders to our friends. "Okay, guys, let's get 1. Let's turn 2. Hit the cutoff man." And that's just the way it was back then. So if I can't go in the Hall of Fame alone, I've got to bring in my Sandlot buddies. I mean, I haven't seen it, you know, I'm not in touch with a lot of those guys now, but they were probably one of the first building blocks that helped me become a coach. Guys like Richard Berger, Johnny and David Muldoon, Billy Curo, Joe Lacerdo, Dougie Levins, my brother Jeff. You know, those guys were the greatest guys in the best neighborhood I could ask to grow up with. And when those friends kind of gave way to my fast pitch softball teammates that Mark mentioned, nothing changed. You know, there's something to be said for being the worst player on a really good team, and that was me. I didn't mind batting ninth and playing right field because I was surrounded by really good players and even more importantly, quality people. A lot of my Folito Farms Express teammates are in halls of fame of their own. My friend Gene Tracy is here. He's in the New York State Wrestling Hall of Fame. Jerry Brown is in the Oswego State Baseball Hall of Fame. My buddy Mark Lazaro and Bobby Farrell are both here. They're in the New York State USA Softball Hall of Fame. So when you're surrounded by people like that, the best thing I could do, and I learned from them, was to be a good teammate. And that's something I always tried to pass along to my players. And then the softball coaches that I worked with. In 28 years of coaching varsity, I only had 3 JV coaches. Ron Ahart, Mark Merbito, and Brad Shannon. And that might not seem like a big deal, but that consistency, I mean, they would always coach against a different coach from the other schools almost every year. You know, the turnover at the other schools was unbelievable. But we had 3 coaches in 28 years at the JV level. And that was a tremendous asset to me as the varsity coach. Because when the girls came out for softball, they knew what they were going to get. And at the modified level, we had a little bit more of a turnover. But it was like a who's who of great educators. Debbie Lavner, Bill Fatiga, Tom Frawley, Barb Carroll, Holly Izzo. Just how could you go wrong with those modified coaches teaching the love of the game to girls at such a young level? In fact, Brad Shannon, being the comedian that he is, he always told me, he goes, you know, the softball program isn't like any of the other programs at the high school. Because if a girl goes from middle school to JV to varsity, the coaching gets worse the higher up you go. And a lot of years, I think he was right. But nobody goes in alone, so those coaches are certainly a big part of tonight for me. Also supportive administrators. I was hired by Joe Wilbur, and that speaks volumes also. And then mentored by Ted Curley, like Mark just said. I mean, most people don't realize or remember that in the 90s, Ted Curley, as the athletic director, assembled probably the best overall coaching staff in all of Section 3. He would have monthly, mandatory staff meetings, all varsity coaches, and you didn't dare miss one. And the things I learned in those meetings, I mean, all the varsity coaches would problem solve. We'd talk about issues. Because even though they didn't coach the same sport I did, they weren't bat and ball coaches, but they had dealt with situations like we were dealing with transportation, or kids in detention, or just general issues about coaching kids. And the things I learned from great coaches, like Mike Klein, G. Dewey, Paul Minch, Mike Sullivan, Paul DeRitter, Bill Fatiga, Debbie Mann. I mean, the list goes on and on. And we were a professional coaching staff. And we cared about each other. We didn't just, it wasn't every program for himself, like, the softball coach hates the track coach and that kind of thing. We were all in it together. And I was proud to be a member of that coaching staff. And some people always called us afterwards Ted's boys. Well, okay, if that's the worst thing people call me, I'm not going to be unhappy about that. And then later on in my career, towards the end, I was able to finish with really two young, innovative, visionary, transformational coaches, or athletic directors, Dave Gritska and Scott Sugar. And not only was I pleased to work under them, but I'm equally happy that they could be here to share this event with us tonight. I wish Helen German was here. Helen was inducted into this Hall of Fame. She was the varsity coach for the 4 years prior to my varsity experience. I coached JV softball. I had never coached girls before. I had coached boys baseball. So Helen mentored me and taught me a lot. Before I even coached a game, she took me to a coaches clinic at OCC. And there was a guy that was the lead clinician there, and everybody knew him. I mean, he was shaking hands, he was filling out paperwork, setting up drills, and I didn't know anybody in the softball community. So I said, "Who's that guy?" And Helen said, "Oh, that's Kerry Bennett from CNS. He'd kill his mother to win a softball game." And the girls from the 1993 team that are here, they're back there nodding their head because we had some really good battles against Coach Bennett. And then, again, I don't know if these girls remember this, but it was in probably the same year. We had played a JV game on the field next to the varsity at CNS, and our game went very quickly. So after the game, I brought the girls over and stood behind the varsity bench to cheer on the varsity team. And Helen saw me out of the corner of her eye, and she said, "Are you ready to coach your first varsity game?" And I said, "What do you mean?" And she said, "I think I'm going to get kicked out." I said, "Well, my game's over, so yeah, if that's legal." So another inning or two went by, and there was a call that went against the Bucks, and Helen went out. She went out with both guns blazing. And she went nose to nose with this, I can still see it like it was yesterday, this little old Italian umpire. And I was close enough to hear the exchange, and finally he had heard enough. And he pointed his finger right in her face and said, "Listen, lady," and you didn't talk like that to Helen. "Listen, lady, one more word, and I'm going to throw you onto that bus." And she looked at him and said, "Try it." He didn't kick her out. She finished her say, she came back to the bench, and she looked at me, she kind of shrugged her shoulders, like I tried. and she was able to finish the game. So Helen taught me so much in those years. We rode buses together, and I appreciate that, and I so wish she was here tonight. People often ask me, what's the best team you were ever a part of? And they throw out suggestions. Some people say, how about that 93 team that came, and I'm going to open up some wounds here, pick at some scabs, that came this close to beating Columbia in the regionals, and probably was the best team in New York State that year. But, you know, the softball gods weren't with us that day. And I said, oh, that was a great team, but probably not. And they say, well, how about the 2001 team? 2001 team won 23 high school games in one season. That's a lot of high school games for, you know, a 2-month season. But I say, no, that probably wasn't the best team I was ever a part of. The best team I was ever a part of was Team McCroby, my family. My kids, Matt, Sarah, Brian, and Eric, who are all here, and my wife, Sally. I can't even begin to count the number of family dinners, birthday parties, concerts, parent conferences, volleyball matches, baseball games, swim meets, and so on that I missed because I was working with other people's kids. But it was a good thing that Team McCroby had a good coach. And that wasn't me, it was my wife, Sally. My wife got in this Hall of Fame in the very first year as a 6-time Section 3 championship swimmer. And finally I caught up to her. But during those years, she was a Hall of Fame wife and mother. And even though I have run this past her and she said, don't tell that story, I just have to tell one quick story that shows what kind of supportive spouse she was. We had a year, probably 4 or 5 years ago, that it was like this year weather-wise. It was an athletic director's nightmare. I mean, it snowed all of March and most of April, and then it rained. So when we started playing games consistently early in May, there was a stretch where we played 7 games in 6 days. We played every day after school and a Saturday doubleheader. And I didn't see my wife much. She was still working. So Saturday night after the doubleheader, I got home and she greeted me and said, what are we going to do tomorrow? Knowing that Sunday would be a non-game day. And I said, well, Jamesville DeWitt is playing in the CNS tournament tomorrow. And we play JD on Tuesday. So I'd like to go up and scout JD. And she looked at me, the look, and she said, you love coaching softball more than you love me, don't you? And anybody who's married knows that there's no right answer to that. So I tried to be funny, which never works. And I said, well, I love you a lot more than I love coaching JV girls tennis. So the next day, we put our 2 folding chairs in the van. I had my scorebook to scout JD, and she had her People magazine, and we went to Gillette Road in North Syracuse, and we watched Jamesville DeWitt. But that's just a story about how supportive she's been, and what a good sense of humor she had, I hope. Finally, coaches enter a Hall of Fame only because they've had good players. You know, and we always, Sally and I always considered the players part of our extended family. When the kids were little, and you know, they're not little anymore, the players were our babysitters. They'd stop by our house on prom night, all dressed up. They'd usually say something like, see, Coach, I clean up pretty good. And since those years, we've been to weddings of former players and kind of watched as many of them have started their own families. So I would like, just for a second, all of my former players, and there are a lot more here than I had anticipated. This is overwhelming for me. But with all my former players, just please stand up, and I promise I'm not going to embarrass you or I'm not going to make you run. So just please stand up for a minute and remain standing. Come on, please. These women obviously represent hundreds of players that I was lucky enough to coach. And when I was coaching, we'd set goals, winning X number of games, but really there are only two goals for a good coach. One is make your athletes better players, and two, help make them better people. And the coach is never really sure if they've accomplished those goals because you're dealing with multiple personality types and all kinds of different kids. And so I was never positive about that. But one thing I'm 100% positive about, that these women and all of the girls I coached helped make me a better coach and definitely a better person. So thank you for being such a big part of my life, girls, and thank you very much, everyone.
Present for his wife, Michelle Wing.
We love you, Wayne. You got this.
Wow, thank you for that.
Get the mic up.
It's been tough. Please bear with me. I'd like to thank the Buck Boosters. I don't think they get the recognition they deserve all the time. It's a great bunch of people who do a lot of things.
Push that mic up, Wayne.
Mike.
Mike.
Mike. There you go.
There you go.
I thought you were going to drink and say.
No. Yeah, my bad.
They really do a great job. I think that the sports program is very lucky to have them. I'd like to thank the selection committee. My wife has been involved, and I know that the committee is anonymous and such, but she, let's just say she's been involved for about 11, 12 years. And right now she's glowing, and I really appreciate the selection committee for what they've done tonight. I'd like to congratulate the other inductees. I was lucky enough and had the privilege to see Tommy and Jake. I'd like to congratulate the Ruggio and Richardson families, and I'd also like to congratulate Sally's husband. Michelle's, yeah, George. Michelle's worked all over the place and done a lot of things that has brought, myself and her to all over the place. And she worked at Liverpool High School, which isn't far, that's not what I'm talking about. But Bishop Grimes, she did the NCAA wrestling finals in Indianapolis. She worked with some athletes up in Lake Placid and had a couple of opportunities up there that she actually turned down so she could stay at Oswego. She did all the Empire State Games from 1994, which I believe was her junior year in college, and the one year that she missed was when we got married. She worked within the Crunch organization. She worked with the Iroquois Nationals for the World Championships up in London, Ontario. She's been offered a lot of jobs, and one of the things that she always said is that this is home. And I don't know if everybody saw it or what, but I had a letter in the paper not too long ago, and I thank the community. And much like my entrance here, you know, I can't say enough. Those who shine from within don't need a spotlight, and that's my wife. She never sought it, never looked for anything. She just glowed. She'd walk in here and everybody would immediately know the dimples, the smile, that goofy laugh. I was having dinner with a friend last night, and she had commented about how the community and people saw her. And one of the things I would like to do tonight is explain a little bit about Michelle the person, and not so much the athletic trainer. Please bear with me. Most of the time, Michelle, you would see her with a ball cap on, ponytail pulled, t-shirt, sweatpants. That was luckily enough her job description for attire. It would be kind of redundant for me to sit here and explain exactly what Michelle did for so many people and what everybody's done for her. Earlier, somebody had said something that I had heard at a Christmas party earlier this year, and the person said, "I've never seen her angry or annoyed at anybody." And let me tell you, that's because you didn't marry her. I met Michelle 25 years ago or so. A 21, 22-year-old Michelle came walking across the field, and a good friend of mine, James Brown, the singer, took one look at her and turned to me and said, "You need to leave that girl alone." We were married a few years later. There's many different things that Michelle is to many different people. She's a role model, a counselor, a teacher. Often students or athletes would call her mom. She just, anything that was needed, my wife would do. She bled buck blue all the way through. The elementary track meet was literally one of her favorite days. She loved working with kids. It went on for 23 hours, but she just enjoyed the entire time. Recently, my wife was elected a Woman of Distinction for New York State through the Senator's office. And a good friend of mine, Sean Onmack, and I went up so that I could receive the award. And I went up and sat with the other women. There was a young lady that sat in front of me, and she also was from Oswego. And she turned around and looked at me back, and a while later she'd look again. And it was about the third or fourth time. She finally turned around to me and goes, "What are you doing here? You're a boy." And the woman next to her said, "Oh, that's Michelle Wade's husband. You know, and she's the one that used to drive between the different sports and fields behind her school." And you can see the wheels kind of turning, and she's thinking, and she goes, "Oh, the Doom Bug lady." So even to me, every now and then I find something new, who she is to people. She's the Doom Bug lady. My wife, for those of you that know her, are extremely passionate for her sports teams. A few years ago, I walked into the house, and it was in April, and she was just brutally angry. And I kind of first thought, what did I do now? And finally I got it out of her that the Yankees had lost. And I said, "Love, listen, it was the second game of the season, we got 161 to go. I'm pretty sure that they're going to be doing it." She moved in with a buddy and me, and when we first met, we had moved her in. I went to work, I came home from work, and my wife and the best man at our wedding were face to face, jawing at each other. And I, ruh-roh. What do? I went went in and changed, came back out, and I started to listen to a little bit of what they were saying. Don't ever try to challenge my wife in sports trivia. My friend Beavis, he had no chance. They were arguing about Dave Brown, quarterback for the New York Giants, his passing percentage, and asked him. He just wasn't even close. Useless knowledge was a trait of hers. We were once in an establishment up around the Canadian border, and some Canadian gentlemen were kind of harassing us a little bit, and I stood up and basically quelled that a little. And finally one of the guys came over and he goes, you know, you Americans really don't know hockey. I said, stop, I come from Oswego. What do you got for me? And they asked a question, and I know nothing about hockey. And I paused and I said, you know what? That is so easy. I'm going to let my wife answer this. Needless to say, we did not leave thirsty. Had made 8, 9, 10 Canadian friends that night. I married an athletic trainer with a Tar Heel problem. She had t-shirts, hats, a parka, gloves, sneakers, t-shirts, scarves. She had this hideous sports bra. I have a Tar Heel hamper in my house. We have carpeting, t-shirts, figurines, and lots more t-shirts. When there was nothing left for her to buy, I'd get ties. Her brother, Michael, has a real nice, that's who she was. As I stated, she was a role model, or tried to be a role model. In her office, there was a swear jar. Outside of school and in real life, my wife was fairly colorful. And if you were in her office and you said something inappropriate or something, you had to throw some change into her jar. I mean, it was nothing big, it was a quarter here. You know, if you had a couple times, either. So one day she got home early and was able to watch one of the Carolina games. And she was sitting on a couch, and I walked in and I set a mason jar on the table. And she looked at it, and then looked at me, and looked back down the jar and said, what is this? I said, a swear jar, love. Every time you say something, you gotta put change in it. She reached in her pocket, pulled out a 20, put it in the jar, and then proceeded to tell me what I needed to go do to myself. Michelle and my marriage was very special. People would ask us all the time, what is your relationship built on? I would go to work very early. I'd be up at 6, out the door. Michelle didn't have to go to work till noonish. And a lot of times we just never saw each other. So we were very stingy with each other's time. And people would go, you know, you guys just make it work. Marriage is hard, but not to be able to see her was, you know, very difficult. They would ask, what's your marriage based on? Is it love, or is it trust? Is it understanding? No. And sometimes I would write down the word, or she would write down the word, and we'd slide it to the person that asked. And our marriage was based on revenge. It's always better to get even with a good laugh. Don't go to bed angry, just get even. I had done something wrong, and John Edwards, it was not the cupcake incident. We were going to Price Chopper to get snacks. We walked in the door. She took a right to the fruits and vegetables. I went to the beer, Dorito food group. I got about 8, maybe 9 aisles away. of a sudden I heard, "Hey, wait!" And I turned very excited because my beautiful wife was now talking to me again. And she said, "Don't forget your hemorrhoid medicine." Point for the shot. What my wife was someone who just flat out gave a damn about everybody. There was a gentleman that got on a shuttle bus one time when we were at the going from Wine Creek to downtown for the Harbor Fest. And it was a packed bus, and a gentleman got on the bus. And you had to have the right change. So my wife immediately started digging in her pockets. And sometimes when you put the cape on, it doesn't get old, but sometimes you just, enough. And I put my arm across her lap. I said, "He's going to find the change. Just stop." I said, "You can't change the world." And I knew as soon as I said it, I'm done. She stared out the window, and just before we got to the stop, she turned to me. She turned to me and very softly said, "I can at least try, can't I?" I married my wife for her qualities and her character. Her beauty was just a bonus. I'd like to thank the athletic staff, the coaches. You helped support her. You helped everything right. I was going to say Sally's husband, Mike. She would come home with a smile. "Where are you?" And she'd kind of laugh or chuckle. And all I had to do was say, "What's Mike up to?" And she would have a funny story, and it just kind of made it so that she could get up the next morning. My wife loved her job. She loved everything about the job. When we moved up here, as the letter has said, we didn't know what to expect. We knew we were going to get snow, but outside of that, we had no clue. And we really didn't find a home. I'd like to thank the athletes. And without you, there is no athletic trainer. You know, there is no athletic department, actually. She thrived off the energy, the hugs, the tears. She'd boot you in the butt when you needed it, and she'd hug you when you did too. Much like at home. I'd like to thank the nurses and all the different typists that had gone through. My wife is simplistically complex. And in order for her to open up, it's something. And she really bonded with the resources of the nurses and typists. I'd like to thank the very many ADs. She went through 12, I believe. Now, some of them were only there for a couple months. The intern, Ted Curley, actually twice. But she came home when she found out that Dave Gritzka was leaving. And she was really upset. I said, "Hon, listen, he's only headed to Mexico. It's not like it's Chennai." And she said, "That's not the problem." I said, "All right." And me being the super husband that I am, I sat down and said, "Okay, what's wrong?" She goes, "Every time I train one of them properly, they leave." I'd like to thank the parents for understanding that clavicle is a collarbone, and a hematoma is a bruise. I've never heard anybody put a 4-syllable word to replace a 1-syllable word. That's an athletic trainer. I've got a whole bunch of friends and loved ones here. Cochran George is in the house. Lots of inner circles. My sister is up from New Jersey. She brought her puppy. Her family is well represented here. Her mom's here. Marianne, who we've talked. I love you. On a personal note, I would like to thank the entire Hall family. I would also like to thank the Richard family. Without them right now, they've accepted me unconditionally, and they understand a man that's broken. I am truly thankful to both those families. Lastly, to Ariana, to Evan, to Anna and Katya, Jack and Mason, Delaney, Kira, and Alexis. You were her stars. You were the loves of her life. And now you're mine. Thanks for listening. Go Bucks, go Heels.
Thanks, Tim. Next up is Mr. Tom Frawley, who will present for Tom Farrell.
My congratulations to the inductees as well. And a special note, Tim, the tie is not Carolina's Blue X and happened this evening. Mike, please enjoy the evening. Somebody can show up at your door tomorrow and ask for the plaque back. Much easier to confiscate in a field. I'm on a 5-minute limit, but just so you know, Bill Simmons yielded me the remainder of his time for his induction. Oh wait, there was no time left at that point. And if you're interested, Tom Farrell, who I'm introducing, is taking Brooke on the over-under on the 5 minutes. Let me begin with my bottom line. And that way you can all nod off when I'm going on. Tom Farrell played each and every game, in each and every sport he played, with the fiercest competitive spirit and purest joy of playing of any player I've ever coached or observed in my time at Oswego Athletics. Tom Farrell played baseball for me on a team comprised of the most highly competitive kids I've ever had the pleasure of coaching. And not only did he stand out, even among them, he was the core of that team's competitive fire. He fueled their desire to overachieve and to never surrender no matter the odds.
Thank you, Mr. Frawley. I'd like to thank God, Oswego High School, the committee, my grandfather for the nomination. Congratulations to all the other inductees as well. This inductee class is special to me as I grew up close to the McRobies and Michelle was my trainer. I just want to let the Wing family know how much we will miss Michelle and how great of a person she was. I would like to thank all the coaches I had, especially Mr. Frawley. Mr. Frawley, not only did you teach me about baseball, but more importantly, you taught me about teamwork and what it means to be a family. These are valuable lessons that I apply daily. Out of all the sports memories I have, playing high school baseball with my best friends is still at the top of the list. There's a group of 5 of us that have been best friends since Little League. We still get together a few times a year, and the stories seem to get bigger and better as the years pass. The last get-together, we had discussed many old sports memories. I'd like to highlight a few of my favorites. Like the time I struck out Jason Snarrow and Adam Spizman. Jason was quick to remind me last night that he got drafted in Little League prior to me. The time Tom Wilde gave up his first home run to a girl in Little League. Tom Jackson's game-saving catch versus Liverpool, New York. And the guys seemed to never let me live down the 90-yard touchdown pass I dropped against Rome senior year. I'd also like to give a shout out to Mr. Sonaro. Where's he at? Mr. Sonaro was the first coach after, I believe, the age of 12 that ever let me pitch. I still blame that game on Adam Spizman calling the wrong pitch, so it's the right move. I wouldn't trade any of those memories for anything. These relationships built and maintained in high school and prior last forever. We are each other's comic relief during the work week. We are each other's godparents, and we're our family. I would also like to thank my grandparents and parents for always being there. Being a parent now makes me realize how much you gave up and sacrificed to take me to practice every day, and you never missed a game. You taught me no matter how busy I get in life, that family and friends always come first. You also taught me to live You also taught me to live every day like it's my last. I try to instill this in my daily life, which is why I have a 5:30 a.m. flight to go to the Kentucky Derby tomorrow. I'd also like to thank my brother. Although I'm not sure how you got inducted into this before me, you teach me a lot growing up. Last but not least, I would like to thank my beautiful wife Jen and daughter Evelyn. They were unable to be here, but their love and constant support does not go unnoticed. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, our next inductee is Jacob McAndrew, who could not be with us tonight. I'll tell you a little bit about him. He lettered in cross-country, indoor track, and outdoor track at Oswego High School. He was twice in the New York State Track and Field Championships. He was undefeated in league competition in 2006, took first place in the McQuaid Invitational in 2006, and placed fifth in the 3,200 meters in the 2006 New York State Championships. I knew Jacob as a student. He was an outstanding academic student and a true gentleman. And we're sorry that he couldn't be with us tonight, so we congratulate him in absentia. And with that, I would like to introduce Mrs. Vita Ruggio Lombard and Mrs. Frances Ruggio Wright, who will present, Enright, oh, I'm sorry. Enright, all right, my apologies. And they will present for Carmen Ruggio.
Let's go excuse us, Ruggio. We tend to be kind of short. So my father was a good 5'10". Hi, I'm Brandon Wright, and I'm Carmen's younger sister. My brother Carmen, when he went to high school, of course, he joined the football team, and he was a freshman. And then when the coach saw him play, he said he could be with the seniors. And so he went up and said, "Do you want to see Carmen?" He said, "No." He said, "They'll kill him." You know, a young kid like him. They said, "No, watch him." And they did, and he said, "Wow, he's great." And the reason was because my father used to shovel coal in the fort, you know, for the soldiers. And my brother Carm had to work for him. So by shoveling coal, he became strong. And I said there was no TV then or none of the electronic games. So all he did is he had to shovel coal. And that's how he became a great player, I think.
being bestowed upon my father. Because if the truth is to be told, when it comes to sports, I am not my father's daughter. What I or any of my sisters know about football wouldn't fill the bowl of a thimble. Another point to be made is that we were all unaware of the Oswego's District Sports Hall of Fame existed. We didn't even know that you existed until my cousin, Roseanne Trianfero, contacted us. I'm sorry. That's not her married name. We gotta realize we all think in terms of contacted us to say that she had submitted his name for acceptance. As his children, my sisters and I knew that he had played football in high school and that he was a good player, but we were ignorant as to how good he really was. Our cousins were unaware of his history at all. Well, it seems back in the 2000s, our cousin Marshall Trianfero, who's a baseball fanatic and a researcher by nature, wrote an article about a local minor league baseball team that had gotten posted on an internet site. As a result of that article, he received a phone call from a man named Don Sherwood, who had played for the team, and Mr. Sherwood was struck at how informed Marshall was and appreciated the work and the effort that Marshall had done to bring about bringing that small bit of history to life. Well, as their conversation continued, Mr. Sherwood spoke of his years attending Oswego High School and of the fact that he had also played on a championship football team with a truly great athlete named Carmen Ruggio. Marshall's going with that strange sense of, isn't this a small world? Told Mr. Sherwood that Carmen Ruggio was his uncle. Well, anyways, after the call, Marshall's natural sense of curiosity and investigative techniques took over, and he began to research me. His efforts compelled his sister, Roseanne, to engage in the process also, and the two of them put together a packet, and then they submitted my father's name to the committee for the Hall of Fame here. Though I cannot speak with any knowledge of the sport, I can speak with knowledge of my father's character. And I'm saying, as I was sitting here listening to each of the speeches, a certain point came through about each of the ones that are being appointed today. And each of these appointees have something in common in that each of them seems to have developed or have had a strong sense of community. And that's one thing that I can say about my father, and we'll get into that also, is Carmen, as my father, as reflected by his age, was clearly a member of what Tom Brokaw called the greatest generation. World War II had not happened yet, but the Depression was in full swing in the 1930s and was having a lasting impact on his life. And if any of us has any inkling of the history, we are cognizant, we know how difficult these years were for the general population of the whole country. And the Ruggio family of the time also experienced that difficulty. And as my Aunt Fran was saying earlier, my grandfather had put in a bid for the municipal task of shoveling coal for 50 cents a ton. And it was a really good deal for the municipality, and the bid was accepted. So from the age of approximately 12 or 13, my father was shoveling coal. And so that's why when he would fast forward a few years and trying out for the football team, and Coach Powers had said, oh no, the seniors, and they would trot all over him. And when he looked at my father, he realized nobody was, once Coach Power saw my father in action, 2 or 3 years of shoveling coal had transformed a young man adolescent into a young man of solid strength, stamina, and balance that no one could possibly trot over. Coach Powers gave my father the opportunity to play varsity throughout his whole high school career, and in deference to the coach. And I think this is probably something that the coaches and maybe many players can attest to today when we have a good coach, in deference to Coach Powers. My father spoke of Dave Powers with the utmost affection and respect for the rest of his life. That's one thing I can definitely attest to. So it can be truly said his character was shaped by the era in which he lived, and the family to which he belonged to, and the sport that he played. From his father, he learned dedication to family and a very strong work ethic. From Coach Powers, he learned not just how to play football, but also the meaning of fair play, the belief in good sportsmanship, and how to function as a member of a team and the school community. My father always, and that's another thing that came through in listening to the speeches here, when they were talking about how gentlemanly and ladylike. I know what you were saying, that your wife could be colorful, but I'm sure she was also a very strong woman, so I should say, good for strong women. That my father always presented himself with dignity and with kindness, and that's something that seemed to come through with many of the speakers here. But once out of high school, his sense of community expanded to include the city of Oswego, the country in which he belonged, and the church in which he worshiped. These fine characteristics were passed on to my brother Frankie, to us girls, and also to the cousins, not just to the Bourgeois side of the family, but also onto his wife's side of the family, the Train Barrows. We all thank the Hall of Fame committee for bestowing this honor, and also the Train Barrow cousins for their work and effort in submitting his name. Thank you.
Actually, he rolled his sleeves up and he rolled his sleeves up. Hey. Yeah, we're on the mic.
What are you talking about?
He's watching Jeopardy. I had a thing that soda, you know, and I was sharing it with him, and he's just like pulling a flip flam on me and taking 2 big sips. You know, it's like, here, listen, I gave him 1 sip. And he's trying to tell a story, take a quick big sip, and then blah, 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 you know, try to distract.
Ladies and gentlemen, for final inductee tonight, we'd like to welcome to the podium Mrs. Phyllis Richardson, who will present for Gary Richardson.
As a former teacher, I know about this and about, okay? So, you're fine. Gary and I have known each other since 1964, and have been married for 48 years, so I know him well. We have 2 sons, Jeff and Greg, and 9 grandchildren, Chris, Dean, Aiden, Ben, Ryan, Alex, Adam, Nash, and Sawyer. They've all kept us involved in sports, those being track and field, cross country, soccer, swimming, wrestling, baseball, lacrosse, hockey, basketball, football. So we've been busy grandparents. Gary's sports participation was in football, basketball, and track and field. I happen to be his cheerleader. I like to be his favorite one. So I saw most of his basketball and football games. I know why he earned the recognition for all 3 sports. Just to name a couple, because you've read them in the paper. He was in his senior year basketball. He was a second high scorer, and also he was second league track team. But there really are many more. Of all Gary's sports awards and recognitions, I think breaking his own shot record of 44 feet and 4 inches with a throw of 3 inches was probably the most rewarding of all. I think is the fellow here who broke his record. I don't know who he was, but congratulations to him. And at one point, he also broke the discus record. Being a successful athlete takes, among other qualities, I believe, talent, physical endurance, and discipline. I feel that they have all helped to prepare Gary for his adult life experiences. One, his government-paid 14-month stay in Southeast Asia, and his career as an Oswego EMT and firefighter, a profession which he was dedicated. Staying in shape has always been Gary's #1 health priority. Today, that dedication and hard work have never faltered, even when faced with major health problems and other of life's obstacles. His determination of getting to the gym 3 times a week has always amazed me, and it hasn't stopped. It's been his regimen for as long as I have known him. He has been a good role model for his family. Traveling back to our high school days has been a lot of fun and brought back fond memories for both of us. It was Gary's father who secretly kept a scrapbook of Gary's highlights in school sports. We didn't know that, and it was such a find when we came across it. So I just want to say thank you. Congratulations to all the 2019 inductees. What an honor. But I do want to add a couple other things. Coach Dewey and Coach Simmons are here, I believe. I want to know if either of you remember that kickoff that never was. I believe it was in 1966, 67, whatever. But if you don't remember that, we can talk about it. So thank you again, and congratulations to all of you.
See, I'm no dummy. Way back, I'll go back to Pearl Creole School when I was at St. John's. Started my sports career probably in 4th or 5th grade. Basketball, Little League, and what else did we play? I can't even remember, but we did well. We played basketball in the CYO League. This was at St. John's, parochial school. We won over 60 games and never lost 1 game. So we're thinking, oh man, we're going to have a hot team in high school. Yeah. I never heard of track. I didn't know what to do. Dewey said to me, "Hey, I'll try to shot put the discus." Okay. First year, freshman year, broke the record in the shot put. I says, geez, that ain't bad. This is gonna be, you know, this is gonna be easy. Excuse me, I'd like to go backwards a little bit here. I do and would like to thank the committee, Rhonda, and anyone else who had the misgivings of having to appoint me to this Hall of Fame. I don't know how it happened. It was, I guess, my father. He made out a scrapbook, and it was just putting regular things in the book. So my dad died young. I was only 24 when he passed away. So while we were moving 2 years ago, we could come up with this scrapbook, and I said, where the hell did this come from? He said, I don't know, let's look through it. Well, we looked through it, and my mom was passed, my dad was passed, so we figured it had to be my dad, just by the writing, what he, you know, he cut out different things, and he emphasized, you know, some of the good things, some of the bad things. Listen, I wasn't no super sport, believe me, but getting back to the basketball, in our freshman year, we were 13-2. And that was a good year. Junior year, sophomore year, basketball, didn't do too well. We were on the probably other end of below 5 out of 18 games. So what, you know? Nobody's perfect. And with the track team, we always did good. We had one hell of a team. And just some of the guys, you know, they were all individuals. And when an individual wins, he scores points. See, I never knew that. Somebody told me, hey, you're ahead in the points. I said, what points? I said, what are you talking about? I said, we don't get points for this, we get points for basketball. We get points for football too. Hey, my sophomore year, I had a great year. I don't know how many touchdowns I scored. I lost count after 3. You know, I'll take what I can get. So we did pretty well, and then in our junior year, I was really throwing that ball around. And all these guys from Syracuse, we were in the Central New York City League. Central New York City League was a tough league. Don't anybody kid you. I mean, I played against some very good athletes in that league. And I can remember asking one fellow, and his name was Rufus. And I said to him, Mr. Rufus, how the hell old are you? He says, I don't know, let me check. So he pulls out his draft card. He's a little bit older than I thought he was. He said, hey, don't tell anybody, but I'm 28 years old. How do you get away with that? He said, start late. Okay. Nice guy, though. It's just so many things, you know, led us to a life of what it was like in Oswego and what it was like in Syracuse. I'll tell you, there was a big difference, a very big difference. And as soon as I got out of high school, I got out by the skin of my teeth. And my wife graduated with honors. So, hey, that's pretty good. By the way, our 49th anniversary is this year. So that's not good. For her to put up with me that long. But as I got out of high school, I entered the service. And
I got a scholarship to the University of Vietnam. And I said, which campus? And they told me, Da Nang. I said, oh, great, big city, nice place. Good. So I said to myself, hey, I don't know how good this is going to go, but I spent 14 months there with people from all diverse people from the south, the north, the east, the west. Good people who ended up not so lucky. But there were people who were lucky. And as things rolled along and we got out of there and they started Vietnamization and they wanted to get rid of us all. I went home, we got married, and I promptly got into a car accident and almost tore my head off. It wasn't fun. It wasn't fun at all. But again, that was life. And as I continued with my life, I went to college for a little while. I went to the Sheriff's Department for 3 years. Oh, yo-ho. I see you back there, hiding in the corner. Who took my place? That's right. Took my badge and everything. So then I left there, and I said, anything got to be better than this. So I went to the fire department. I spent over 30 years there, to tell you the truth, and a job that's sort of crazy because most people run away from fire, and idiots like us run into fire. Now there's some firemen that I want to acknowledge here, and one of them's Ducky Dow, Sr. Good man, Ducky Dow, Jr. Richie Ward, good man. Mark Mary. But I'll tell you what, if I ever had an emergency, he'd be the first guy I'd call. He'd be right now, too, if I had to. But this, the things that I did were team-oriented things. And I don't know if I deserve this award or not, but they seem to think so. Even though my wife did teach Rhonda in grade school. But she didn't know that. But to sum it all up, it's been a good life. Oswego High School did good by me. And I could just thank everyone who had anything to do with what I had done in those years. And luckily, it was only 4 years. Not 5, not 6. So again, everyone, thank you. Thank you very much. I forgot somebody. Pat Tickle. He was a fireman too. Yeah. Well, Chief McGovey. Oh boy. We'll teach him everything he knew. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, before we adjourn tonight, we'd like to invite those present to consider nominating a person or team for the Hall of Fame class of 2020. Specific information about the criteria for eligibility and the nominating process is available on the school's website, as well as from Athletic Director Ms. Rhonda Bullard. We'd also like to ask tonight's inductees, as well as their presenters, to stay with us for a few minutes afterward for photographs. This concludes our program for tonight. On behalf of the Oswego School District, the Athletic Department, the Buccaneer Boosters, and the Hall of Fame Nominating Committee, we thank you for attending and ask for one more round of applause for the class of 2019.